Hey everyone. After a long time of reading papers and presenting them to our research groups, I just decided today, why wouldn't I just record it and perhaps post it online? Maybe someone else might find it useful. So, so here starts my journey of recording paper reviews. And today I want to talk about this very interesting paper from Guy Davidson and Dr. Michael Moser from Google Research and Colorado University at Boulder. The title of the paper is Sequential Mastery of Multiple Visual Tasks, Network Naturally Learn to Learn and Forget to Forget. This is a really dense paper, and instead of just going through the paper and discussing the various aspects of the paper, I made a presentation, so I'll be jumping back and forth between the paper and the presentation. So, if, yeah, that's the most easiest way I think I could do this particular recording. So let's jump to the presentation first. So as I said, the paper title is Sequential Mastery of Multiple Visual Tasks, Networks Naturally Learn to Learn and Forget to Forget. So the problem that the authors are trying to tackle here is in the field of lifelong learning, where you want to, where your model is continuously learning, and there are tasks, and the model has to learn those tasks, and then you might get newer tasks, and the model has to learn to do well on the new task while also maintaining high accuracy or decent accuracy on previously learned tasks. And typically, this field has been divided into two subfields: meta learning and catastrophic forgetting. So, meta learning deals with the problem of being able to learn a new task. So, typically people measure how fast or how accurately can you learn a new task given that you have learned on previously n-1 tasks. So if a new task comes in, how fast can you learn this new task given that you've learned some n previous tasks? And catastrophic forgetting is a subfield where people usually deal with the model's accuracy on a previously learned task, given that it's learning a new task. So yeah, that's catastrophic forgetting. And typically, these two subfields have been looked at separately. They have been their performances of the different models have been analyzed separately. And in this paper, the authors argue that essentially these two subfields are two ends of a same spectrum or the same continuum. So they coin catastrophic forgetting as perhaps they are not coining it, they just use the name backward interference to refer to catastrophic forgetting. So backward interference is when you learn a new task, you're interfering with a previously learned task. This is the beginning of the spectrum. And then meta learning is forward facilitation. So how well does learning on numerous tasks helps you learn a new task? So this is ability to forward facilitate the learning of a newer task. So this is at the end of the spectrum. So catastrophic forgetting is at the beginning and meta learning is at the end. And since they are part of the same continuum, the authors want to investigate both the topics together. So unifying the topics, they want to investigate from the first task, the performance of the model from the first task to the nth task, and what are the consequences of introducing a new task I. And for measuring these performances, I'll be going more in depth as to what this means, but for measuring the performances of meta learning, the authors want to use number of how fast a model is able to learn a new task. So essentially, the number of epochs to master the I task while maintaining mastery on the previously learned I-1 tasks. And for catastrophic forgetting, the number of epochs it requires you to master the previous I-1 learned task when the new task I is introduced. So I'll tell you why you can measure the previously learned tasks, because the curriculum they use is in that specific manner, and that will be discussed in the methodology slide. So just for now, here you want to measure the performance on the I task to measure meta learning, and you want to, given that you're learned on previously I-1 tasks, and then you want to measure the performance on performances on the I-1 tasks, given that the new task I has been introduced. So these are the two things to measure catastrophic forgetting and meta learning. And the main takeaway from this entire paper, so a one sentence punchline of the paper is a standard neural network architecture, when trained sequentially to acquire and maintain mastery of multiple visual tasks, exhibit faster acquisition of new knowledge and less disruption of previously acquired knowledge as domain expertise expands. So putting this in simpler terms, if a model, a neural network, is trained sequentially on multiple tasks, and here you're training on newer tasks while maintaining, so this word maintaining mastery on the previously acquired tasks is important, right? And while maintaining your mastery of previously acquired tasks, it helps you become more faster in meta learning, so faster acquisition of new knowledge, so forward facilitation is better, while there's less disruption of previously acquired tasks. So there's less catastrophic forgetting, so backward interference is reduced. So as more domain expertise, the more domain expertise you gain, the better you become in learning new tasks in the same domain, while also not forgetting about the previously learned task in that domain. That's the main takeaway from this entire paper. So just quickly into talking about the data set. This is not essential to understand the results of the paper, but just a background on what the data set is. It's called the Clever data set. So this is a data set where you can generate images consisting of different types of objects, as you can see here. So three-dimensional objects, and essentially you can define like the properties of these objects. So you can define the different shapes that the objects can take, the color of the objects, and also the texture of the objects. So and essentially, the data set that the authors used were 45,000 images that were randomly generated, consisting of 4 to 5 objects. And then for the tasks, so the tasks are simple binary yes or no problems. So a particular task can be whether this image consists of a red object, or a task can be whether this particular image consists of a spherical object, etc. And so each one of these is a task. And the good thing about this data set is that each task can be applied to all the images, 45,000 images. So each task is applicable for the entirety of the image data set you create. And since there are 3 dimensions here and with 10 unique features, the authors propose to select one particular dimension and randomize the 10 different features within that dimension. And after doing that, they perform 10 different tasks and then collapse the results over the 3 dimensions. They also, so this is the homogeneous setup for this particular problem. They also looked at a heterogeneous setup, which we can discuss later. So this is essentially the method of creating the data set and using the data set for training. And the methodology for training is there are totally 10 different tasks for a particular domain. So as we discussed, there are 10 features. So each feature is a different task. So there are 10 different tasks. So in total, there are 10 total episodes. So each task training is considered as an episode. And a model is initially randomly random weights. So a model is created with random weights, and then it's trained continuously without resetting over the total 10 episodes. So there's no resetting of the model parameters ever. So the main thing to take away from the methodology of training or the curriculum that they provide to the model is during episode 1, the model is trained on task 1 dataset. And in episode I, half of the dataset is the new task I, and half the dataset is on the old task 1 to I-1 split equally. So for example, for the third episode, half the data set is going to be task 3, and the remaining half of the data set is split between 1 and 2. So 25%, 25% is going to be 1 and 2 tasks. So this is essentially how they're able to measure the performances on the catastrophic forgetting on previous tasks. So if you remember the previously discussed, this is how they're able to measure the performances on how fast the model is able to achieve threshold accuracy on these previously learned tasks. And to finish it off for methodology, you train until you achieve a threshold accuracy on the holdout test data sets for all the I tasks. So the threshold accuracy they've set is 95%. So for each episode, you have to, so episode I, so you have to achieve 95% accuracy on the holdout test data sets for the task I minus 1, I minus 2, etc. till 1. So for each of the tasks you have been learning on, you have to achieve holdout accuracy. And the model that they use is a pretty vanilla convolution model. This is something you would have seen in previous, like any previous convolution layers. Simply 4 convolution layers with nonlinearity being ReLU in it. And they use batch norm and batch normalization within the models, and fully connected networks also consisting of 4 different layers. One thing of note is there is not individual, each task does not contain individual outputs. So if you remember, the output is this binary, yes or no. And typically, people utilize 3 different, or like for each task, a separate output layer. But instead, the authors propose to include the task representation here. So the model gets the task representation. So for example, the question, is there a red color object, would take a 1-hot encoding, which is 100, etc. And this is concatenated to the fully connected layer. So this is concatenated here, and this goes into the fully connected layer. So the fully connected layer will know which task it's dealing with. So based on that, it's going to output yes or no. Pretty simple and effective. So now I'm going to discuss the results. So there are results. So if you look at the paper, their results are punched into one figure, figure 3. And both the meta-learning and catastrophic forgetting results are part of the same figure. Instead of going through this huge, like enormous figure consisting of a lot of information, I have decided to split down this figure into individual components. And I'll first discuss the meta-learning results for this particular, for the particular image. And then I will go to the catastrophic forgetting part, results of this particular image. So just looking at the meta-learning results, really interesting results, as you can see here. This is the plot between how long it takes you to achieve a new task accuracy of 0.95 for a particular episode, and to the number of training trials. And as you can see, this is on the log scale, so this follows a power law, which is really important to show how well the model is able to learn as new task increases. So just going through this figure, the first task is shown by cyan color. So this is this bright blue here. And the second task is this blue here. Third task is the next darker blue till the 10th task, which is the magenta line over here. So this dark magenta line over here. And again, this is the accuracy, new task accuracy. So how well you're performing on task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, etc. till task 10. So the first thing I want to show you here is the meta-learning part of the results. So as you can see, initially, it takes your model at least almost 250 training trials to reach a threshold accuracy of 0.95 for the first task. There is some, the second task takes much longer, but we'll discuss this later. But as you can see, as you go up in the task order, near the 10th task, by almost 22,500 training trials, you have already achieved 80% accuracy on the test data set for the 10th task. And you can see that you achieve the 95% threshold accuracy almost at a fraction, one-fourth of what it took. One-fourth what it took for you to reach for task one. So this shows that learning on multiple tasks, as you keep learning on multiple tasks, you're able to forward facilitate, and you get to a point where your meta learning rate is so much higher. You get 95% accuracy on the 10 tasks so much faster. So this shows how well meta learning facilitation is happening in the model. So this is one of the meta learning results I want to talk about. This is another way of visualizing the same result. So this is between the y-axis here now is the log on the log scale new task trials. So how many trials of training is required for you to achieve the criterion of 95% accuracy. And the x-axis is the episode number. So new task accuracy versus episode number. So this again shows you that initially it took you around 128,000 training trials for you to learn task one. For task two, it takes more time, and this is because of catastrophic forgetting, but we'll discuss this later. But after task two, you can see that it starts decreasing. And this is on a log-log scale, so this shows power law. And so you can see that this is decreasing even at task 10, and there's a linear decrease. And this is really good. This shows that the more tasks you're going to learn, the better you're going to do at acquiring new tasks. So essentially the same result of forward facilitation. This is again another figure to look at meta learning results. So this is figure 3F. And this is again, what's the accuracy at a particular epoch. So training trial. And so this is again at 22,500. You can see that initially, the first task you're learning it, you're at 70% accuracy. The second task takes a hit, but after that, you're always increasing in your accuracy gain. And at the 10th task, you're almost 80% accuracy after 22,500 from 70% accuracy. So these are meta learning results. And next, I want to talk about catastrophic forgetting results. And I believe 3B shows is the best representation of just understanding how badly catastrophic forgetting affects the model, but how well it's relieved after learning on multiple tasks. So just looking at the figure 3B, so let me explain the figure first. So this is y-axis is first task accuracy. So this is only looking at the first task. And the x-axis is the number of training trials required to get to that particular accuracy. So number of training trials in the log scale. So again, this is following power law. And here, this is number of times it's been trained. So this is the episode. So episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. So black is episode 1 and copper is episode 10. So what you can see here is for episode 1, so you're only training on task 1. You train the model and it takes around 250,000 training trials to achieve a threshold accuracy of 95%. Now, at episode 2, you can see that you're at around 15,000 or 10,000 training trials. Your accuracy again drops back to 75%. And to remember, this model is being continuously trained. There's no resetting of weight parameters. So essentially, you trained your model to achieve 95% accuracy on the holdout test data set. And in the episode 2, you just introduced task 2 data set. 50% is task 2, 50% is task 1. But because of this introduction of task 2 and because of backward interference, learning on task 2 is interfering with what you have learned on task 1. So you drop back to 75% accuracy, and now you have to climb again to 95% accuracy. And this takes you around 128,000 training trials, sorry. But again, when you go to episode 3, now we are learning on task 1, task 2, and task 3. Even though you have learned it twice, you again drop back to like 82%. And then you have to learn task 1 again, and then you achieve it much faster. But what you can see is that this line keeps increasing, and by the 10th task, your starting accuracy is already above the threshold for task 1. So at the 10th task, by just training for 4,000 trials, you're already starting at 95% accuracy. So comparing this with task 2, task 3, this tells you that initially there is huge backward interference if you just compare it with episode 2. But the more tasks you're learning, the better you're doing. And this is a really interesting result, because typically in the field of catastrophic forgetting, they just compare like with few tasks. So essentially you learn on task 1, you now learn on task 2, and then you see how well you're doing on task 1. And perhaps they might go to like task 3, task 4, but this is I guess the first like paper that looks at so many tasks, like 10 different tasks, and how does it affect previously learned tasks. So this is a really interesting curve, and again, this is on log scale, so I really like that it's following the power law. So that's an interesting figure that I really liked. And this is the other figure for catastrophic forgetting that I would just want to highlight another viewpoint of this. So this is figure 3C. So this is log trials to criterion and number of times trained. So here cyan is the first task, and then magenta is the last task. So if you just look at this curve, so learning task 1 for the first time, episode 1, it takes you 128,000 trials, but learning it in episode 2 along with task 2, you can see that there's this bump, and this is essentially because of catastrophic forgetting. This is interfering with your previously learned tasks. So learning 2 tasks makes you learn it slower. So you have to, it's almost double. But after that, it continuously decreases, and this is following the power law. And this is, again, a really good result. You can see that similar results are provided for learning task 2, task 3, perhaps. But since you're already learning multiple tasks by task 3, task 4, you can see that they're all dropping. But the main result is just looking at task 1 performance, I suppose. Yeah, so this is moving to the next figure. So at this point, I may jump to the paper itself. I'm just going to touch on the other results that's there. So the figure 3 is the main chunk of results in this paper, but I just want to discuss some of the other results in figure 4 and figure 5 and 6 and 7, perhaps. So figure 4, this is another interesting figure. This is essentially looking at, this figure is essentially looking at how long does it take you to forget a previously learned task, and specifically just looking at task 1. So the experimental setup for this particular problem, particular figure, is at each episode. So except episode 1, at each of the other episodes, episode 2 to 10, you remove task 1 dataset, training dataset from it. So, and you look at how long does it take for you to drop in accuracy for task 1. So here 1 is actually episode 2. So here you've just learned task 1, and you're now learning task 2 alone. You don't have task 1 dataset in your regime. And 9 is episode 10. You've learned task 1 the previous 9 times, but in episode 10, you're not going to learn task 1. You're just focusing on the remaining tasks 2 to 10. So what you do see here is initially you've just trained on task 1, but adding task 2 alone drop, like you can see that there's an exponential drop in your accuracy. So this is this black line. You're initially at 100% accuracy, and then you drop like a log over here to around almost 50% accuracy at 7,500 trials. But the good thing is the more number of tasks that you're learning on, and the more number of times you've mastered the same task, your accuracy decrease is slower. So at episode 10, you're not learning task 1, but you can see that decrease is slightly, perhaps linear over here. But what you must notice is that it's still decreasing. So, but by 45,000 training trials, your accuracy has dropped to 0.7%, even though you've trained the previous, not 0.7%, but 70%, even though you've trained previous 9 times on the same task. So this essentially is that wording of maintaining accuracy. So this shows that you still need to maintain your accuracy, meaning you still need to train on previously acquired tasks. So just because you've learned it 10 times or 9 times does not mean that you don't still need to learn it. You still need to keep learning it. And if you don't learn it, you're going to forget it after a while. And this curve tells you what is that time period required for you to start forgetting. This figure is again another interpretation for all the different episodes for all the tasks. So the takeaway from this figure too is the same. The more you have trained on a particular more you have trained and the more tasks you're learning, the slower the drop in accuracy is. So that's essentially what this figure is trying to tell you. Let us look at some more figures. So figure 5. This figure 5 is what I was telling you before. Instead of just having homogeneous tasks, as I mentioned, so homogeneity in terms of the domain. So instead of just having color domain or being the sequence of task, or the shape domain being the sequence of task, here what happens if you mix all the 3 domains? And there is not a lot of difference in the figures from this to the previous one, but essentially you get the same set of results. So it does not matter if it's homogeneous tasks or heterogeneous tasks. So that's the takeaway from figure 5. Figure 6 is also an interesting figure. This is in question to changing the convolution layer information. So let me actually jump back to the presentation and go to the model. So one of the questions that the authors wanted to look at was, most of this paper has been inspired in some form from biology and from like how humans and animals understand concepts. So one of the things that the authors claim is that our convolution layers in our eyes or in the human being also has some ability to understand the task representation. So essentially, what happens if you include the task representation into the convolution layer? So not just including this task representation, which is a one-hot encoding into the fully connected layers over here, but what happens if you can include the convolution layer over here to the task representation to the convolution layers? And interestingly, what the authors found is that this helps in reducing catastrophic forgetting. So let me point out to the particular line that we want to see. So again, this is the figure for log trials to criterion and versus number of times trained. And so cyan is the first task, and magenta is the last task. And specifically, I just want to point out to this line here. If you remember the previous figure that we saw, when the convolution layer did not get the information about the task, this particular point was here, almost double. So essentially what happened is catastrophic forgetting, backward interference forced the task 1 learning at episode 2 to be higher number of training trials. But because of including this representation, it actually goes down. So this is the main takeaway from this particular experiment. So catastrophic forgetting can also be reduced by including the representation to the convolution layers. And finally, there's also a comparison to mammal. I'm not going to go in depth into this figure or the results on comparison with mammal, but essentially the authors found that it takes mammal more time to achieve the criterion. They achieve 95% accuracy than their methodology of curriculum that they are using for training. Interested people can go into the figure and understand the results. So yeah, this is the figure for comparing with mammal. So those are the results that I wanted to cover essentially in this paper. And some of the future ideas that the authors proposed or wanted to talk about is what are the tasks you would want to learn so that you facilitate backward learning. So essentially we looked at forward facilitation and backward interference. So, but are there tasks that exist which when you learn helps you be better in a previously learned task than just learning on that task? So it's a neat idea of thinking about what task will help you be better in a previously learned task. So backward facilitation. And another problem that the authors want to look at in the future was humans have a really great understanding of how to combine different types of tasks, or essentially combinatorial understanding, but deep learning models till now have not tried to look at these problems. So they want to look at whether how to actually do combinatorial task understanding. And finally, the authors propose looking at the order of tasks. So here, the tasks are selected at random, so the sequence of tasks is random. But is there actually a correct order of tasks that will, like the correct curriculum in which the task is ordered and help in both forward facilitation, backward interference? So this would be also interesting to look into. And so these are the 3 different future ideas that can come from this paper. Really interesting paper. Let me know how you like it. Thank you.